I noticed something about the younger generation that, well, it kind of makes me feel old. Recently, me and some other cool dudes made some cold start videos of us starting up our older vehicles in super cold weather. New Guy's Garage cold started his 65 Mustang. I cold started my 67 Mustang. 6% recycled. Attempted to cold start a Rambler, and then cold started a Jeep Comanche, and then Whitty's Garage sort of cold started his 69 Mustang, but then he cold started his 86 pickup truck. So that kind of got me on this long tangent of watching cold start videos. I watched a bunch of them. The videos were always of older vehicles, older carbureted vehicles, and the comments were always something like, "What are you doing with your foot? Why are you pressing on the gas pedal? You should show your foot in the camera." Stuff like that. And then watching some other videos of some younger people try and cold start older vehicles, I realized younger people don't really understand carburetors. It was a little bit baffling to me because most of the vehicles I've owned have been carbureted, and then I realized I'm old. So for all you younger folks, I'm going to show you some things on a carburetor and explain what we're doing with our feet when we're pressing on the gas pedal trying to start an old vehicle in cold weather. Okay, I've got two-barrel Rochester carburetors here. Now you might be wondering why a guy that has all Ford vehicles has a couple of Chevy carburetors in his garage. Simple answer is, I don't discriminate. I like my vehicles that are reliable and run really well, and I like ones that just, end up as parts kicking around because they're no good for anything else. Anyway, let's go over the anatomy of a carburetor real quick. I'm not going to go into any depth about how a carburetor works. All you have to know is that this is the part of the engine that mixes the air and the fuel on these older vehicles. Now this first blade up here, this first cover, that's the choke. That opens up into the carburetor. This is called the choke because when you completely close it, it chokes out the engine a bit and prevents more air from going into the carburetor. This is what determines how much air goes into the carburetor. Now on the bottom of the carburetor, this is the part that would be mounted to the intake manifold on your engine. You can see these blades, and these are the throttle blades. And so if I move this linkage, that opens, and this is what determines how much air and fuel mixture goes into the engine. So when you open up your throttle, more air fuel mix comes out of the carburetor into the engine, makes more things go boom. Now, there's two main ways that these older vehicles controlled these chokes. The first and oldest way is with a manual choke. Now, this is only half of a carburetor, but this has a manual choke. You'll notice that right here on this little linkage, there's a little spot where a cable would go, and it would go into the cabin of the vehicle, and the operator would manually open and close the choke however much they needed. You'll also notice that on the choke blade there's this little spring-loaded valve thing, and there's a hole right here. That's so that when this is completely closed, there's still a little bit of air that gets into that carburetor. Unfortunately, this carburetor is froze up and it won't turn, but it has an automatic choke. Now this is how they did it before electronically controlled chokes, is behind this plastic cover, you have this spring. Now this spring is similar to one that you would find in an outdoor thermometer, like one of the big ones you put on your deck, and it moves, it expands and contracts with heat changes. So as the engine heats up, this spring moves, and it pulls on this little tab here. I don't know if you can see that. There's a little tab here. That is directly connected to the choke blade. So when the engine is cold, the choke blade is completely shut. As it heats up, this spring expands and pushes on the choke blade and opens it up gradually.
Now, something that this carburetor is missing that this carburetor has is this little vacuum diaphragm here. And this carburetor would have had an auto choke on it, but it's missing. But what this does is, since this is shut when the engine is off, when you first start it, it'll suck all that nice rich fuel into the engine, and that auto choke will slowly open the choke, that spring, as it heats up. But what this little guy does is, if we just kept this completely closed like this, the engine would not run right because it's just not getting enough air. It's good for when we first turn the key, but not for when we're running. So once this gets vacuum, when the engine starts to run, it pulls on the linkage and opens the choke just a little bit so that there's just a little bit of air getting in there. And then as the engine warms up, that auto choke spring will slowly open the choke up more so that the engine runs better.
So now that I've got the basic anatomy of a carburetor out of the way, let's get to our main question, which is, what are you doing with your foot? Why do you pump the gas when you're trying to cold start a vehicle? Why do you put your foot to the floor at all? Let me take you to the Mustang and show you a couple things.
Now here's the carburetor in the Mustang. It's a single barrel carburetor, so it's a bit different than the one that I showed you inside, but it has similar features. It's got an automatic choke right here, which has the spring inside, and here's our choke blade. Now watch what happens when I put the throttle all the way open. I grab the throttle here, open it all the way up, and then release it. Our choke closes. So on an automatic choke, putting your foot all the way down to the floor and then releasing it sets the choke. It closes it. After the engine's been running and everything, it's going to open up like this. It's going to be open like that when you come back to the car, so you have to reset it. Now with a manual choke, all you have to do is pull it closed, and then you have to manually adjust it. So that's the number one reason why you put your foot to the floor in a carbureted vehicle when you're trying to start it. Now, why do you hit the gas pedal multiple times while you're trying to start it, you might ask? If you need to set the choke, you only hit it once. Well, it comes to this little guy right here. This is our accelerator pump. Sometimes the accelerator pump is on top of the bowl of the carburetor, but on this one it's on the side. It's usually a little diaphragm or a plunger. And its job is to basically smooth out the transition between idle and acceleration. It gives a little extra shot of gasoline down the throat of the carburetor when you really punch on it. So it'll do this even when the car's not running. So by hitting the gas pedal a couple times, you work the accelerator pump and it squirts a little extra fuel down in there to kickstart everything. Now, this will only work if you've got some fuel in the bowl of your carburetor. If your carburetor's completely dry, pumping it really doesn't do much, at least not that I know of. Then you would want to turn the engine over so that the fuel pump starts filling up the carburetor, and then you can give it a few pumps. All right, and here it is in action. You can see the accelerator pump squirt some fuel down in there. There you go. Now we're in the F-250, and here's an example of a manual choke. This little guy is connected to a cable that's connected to that choke blade on the carburetor. You pull out to close the choke, you push in to open the choke, and then anywhere in between.
Well, I hope I was able to clear some stuff up for you, and I hope I was able to answer your questions about why you pump the gas when you're starting an old vehicle, especially in cold weather. And I'd like to leave you with one piece of advice, and that is, if you have an older vehicle that you're learning to work on, go and get yourself a shop manual for that vehicle. Now, this thing has a lot of good information in it. It's got good diagrams, and this will help you learn a lot about your old vehicle and how to work on it. The internet is a good place to get information as well. However, the internet is full of opinion. So I'd recommend getting a shop manual first and learning all the stuff in there before you start looking at things on the internet and taking people's different opinions and testing them for yourselves. Also, I want to give a big thanks to New Guy's Garage. He sent me his sticker. Also, his music has been in my videos before, and his music might be in this video too. I don't know yet. If it is, then I'll put that here, that it's in here. Also, big thanks to Mad Fabrications for sending me one of his stickers. Super cool design. His work's super cool too. I follow him on Instagram. You can find him there. And yeah, thanks for watching, and comment down below what kind of classic vehicle you've got, or what kind of classic vehicle you wish you had. And I'll see you in the next one.